Hello and welcome to another video review from AV Forums. I'm Phil Hinton and I've been the editor of AV Forums since 2003. I'm also a fully trained and qualified THX and ISF calibrator with 16 years of experience. In today's video we're looking at the Philips OLED854 4K OLED TV. If you like our reviews and want to see more of them while supporting our channel, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell to be informed every time we upload new video content. Also, don't forget to check out the TV forums at Europe's largest AV community on AV Forums to see what owners of this TV think about it after normal use in their own homes. Don't forget to also check out the full written review at avforums.com. The Philips OLED854 is a mid-range OLED TV from the company lineup, which comes in 55 and 65 inch screen sizes. It's identical to the OLED804, with the only difference between the models being the design of the stand. Everything else is identical between the two screens. The OLED854 features the 3rd generation P5 Pro picture engine for picture processing performance, along with both Dolby Vision and HDR10 plus dynamic metadata HDR formats, and they're also claiming 99% wide colour gamut coverage. Unique to Philips TVs is the Ambilight system, and the 854 provides mood lighting, motion effects or accurate bias lighting from behind the TV on 3 sides. Smart TV is provided by Android TV version 9. Unlike the higher end models in the Philips range for 2019, there is no Bowers & Wilkins soundbar provided with the 854, but there is Dolby Atmos decoding and playback through the speakers that are built in. The Philips OLED854 has a bezel-less style panel with a thin 1mm strip around the top, sides and bottom, and is a gunmetal grey colour. The raised design of the 854 stand is attractive and adds a nice rise to the height of the panel from your mounting position by about 30mm. The other unique feature of the stand is the ability to swivel the screen left or right by around 20 degrees each way. However, there is no cable management available. Around the back of the OLED we have the 3-side Ambilight LEDs, and the connections are to the right when looking from the rear. We have sideways and downward firing connections. Sideways we have a common interface slot, 2 USB slots, headphone output and 3 HDMI 2.0B ports. Downwards we have a further HDMI port, component and audio inputs, digital audio out, RF and twin satellite antennas, along with an Ethernet port. All 4 HDMI inputs are ARC compatible and support Dolby Vision, HLG, HDR10 and HDR10 plus HDR signals, along with 60p 4K 18 gigabits per second video. The remote control that is supplied with the TV is a smaller version of the double-sided Philips unit that we saw with last year's models. It's made from high-grade plastic and has a QWERTY keyboard on one side and the main controls on the other. The top of the remote has the most important keys for Ambilight and directional and enter keys, along with the settings and home buttons. The rest of the keys are logically laid out in an intuitive manner, and the remote fits neatly in the hand. As we always do within our reviews, we measured the out-of-the-box picture presets to find those that get as close as possible to the industry standards. The idea is that the TV must get close to these standards in at least one of its picture modes, so end users can see the content as it was mastered and intended to be seen. Calibration is not always an option for end users, so actually knowing how accurate out-of-the-box presets are is very important in any honest TV review. We see absolutely no point in assessing and reviewing TVs in only the perfectly calibrated picture modes, as this doesn't reflect what the vast majority of buyers will experience with the TV. We don't only focus on the calibrated performance here at AV Forums. Using the most accurate ISF night mode for darkroom viewing, colour temperature warm and the gamma tracking 2.4, we can see that the out-of-the-box grayscale results are not quite as accurate as we had hoped for. Having said that, despite a slight yellow tint in the brighter areas of the image, gamma tracks well with just a brightening at 80 and 90% stimulus, plus our delta E errors are under 3 until around 70% stimulus, where it rises to around 4, and this is why we can see the slight yellow tint. The Rec 709 709 colour gamut for HD is also decent, with a few slight errors in saturation tracking and hue. Magenta is the most obvious issue, where its hue tracks towards red, and green hue is also slightly above 75% saturation. Everything else is there or thereabouts, and with actual viewing material we didn't notice any obvious issues caused by the errors, with skin tones looking natural. It could be more accurate out of the box, but for the vast majority of end users, the image errors are slight and probably not noticeable. Thankfully, it was possible to use the provided calibration controls to get extremely good results from the 854, with the new 20-point white balance control being added for 2019 sets. We managed to get reference levels of accuracy from the grayscale after calibration, with superb tracking and average delta E errors of 0.5. Gamma was our only issue, with a slight brightening at the brightest end of the image scale that couldn't be tamed. This won't cause too many issues with most content, but it does mean that some detail may be missing in bright areas of the image. Moving to the Rec 709 colour gamut, and with the grayscale calibrated, we were able to make some slight adjustments in the colour management system to have almost all the points in the saturation track where they should be. We obtained an average delta E error of 1.62, with the largest error at 3.09. SDR image accuracy after calibration is excellent on the Philips 854. As we found with most of the 2019 OLED TVs, the peak brightness and use of dynamic tone mapping has improved HDR playback to provide stunning levels of dynamic range, with peak white against absolute blacks at the pixel level. The Philips 854 measured over 750 nits with 2 and 5% windows, and at 706 nits on the industry standard 10% window. As we keep stressing within our reviews, peak brightness measurements are only one part of the overall picture quality when it comes to HDR playback, with dynamic tone mapping and other factors also impacting on image quality. In the most accurate picture mode for HDR, we can see excellent grayscale tracking to D65, and the PQ EOTF also tracks well before rolling off and hard clipping at just over 700 nits, around the 90% stimulus mark. The Philips 854 does not change its measured tone map based on static metadata. Instead, it has a fixed response curve as seen in our graph here, with HDR perfect in minimum mode. This is the default and is the most accurate for 1000 nit master content, but it's also the best catch-all setting for most users when it comes to HDR. Colour gamut coverage for P3 was also excellent out of the box, with the 854 nearly able to hit every point within the saturation tracking. It's an excellent result out of the box, and it points to decent wide colour gamut coverage. Overall, the measured results were very good for HDR10, with a stable tone map and gamut coverage. We measured BT 2020 at 70% XY and 73% UV, with P3 coming in at 96% XY and 97% UV. Like all other 2019 OLED TVs, the Philips 854 offers stunning black levels with superb shadow detail and excellent dynamic range with strong natural looking colours. We compared it with the LG C9, Panasonic GZ2000 and GZ950, along with the Sony BVM X300 mastering monitor, as well as putting it through our normal testing procedures. Philips is renowned for its video processing, and the new 3rd generation P5 chip is on board the 854. Upscaling is excellent, with 576i SD broadcast looking as good as you can expect for such a low resolution on a 4K panel, and HD Blu-ray and streaming looks nice and sharp with good line definition and no obvious signs of edge ringing within the content. We didn't notice any artifacts with upscaled images in the accurate modes, even with test patterns. Obviously, with the P5 chip, you also have lots of image manipulation options, including extra sharpening and edge enhancement settings if you really want to go to town. But when set to off, we didn't see anything that was being applied that shouldn't be there in the image. Motion was also good, with no obvious issues with 24 frames per second material, with correct pull down applied when motion style is set to movie. All other motion options add in interpolation and soap opera effect even in the minimum settings, and they should be handled with care if you decide to use them for fast moving video and sports footage. SDR picture quality was very good out of the box, with decent skin tones and colour performance, even though the measured results were not perfectly accurate. However, once calibrated, the image takes on a slightly richer and deeper tone, with film content looking incredibly cinematic with excellent detail, dynamics and sharpness. Moving to HDR, and we see some small improvements on last year's HDR performance from Philips, with better tone mapping, superb colour reproduction and no signs of posterization, which was an issue with some material last year. Some users may find the more aggressive automatic brightness limiter an issue when HDR Perfect is switched off. The tone map used tries to roll off to retain detail in the specular highlights, which does also impact on the overall image brightness when compared to its peers, but in isolation this would be less obvious. This is a very similar approach Sony takes to provide a more consistent HDR look. The HDR movie preset does default to HDR Perfect Minimum, which is the best catch-all setting for 1000 and 4000 nit content. In comparison with the Sony BVM X300 Professional 30-inch monitor, the 854 was very good, especially with SDR content, with just the cyan white of the Philips WRGB panel looking slightly different to the monitor's RGB OLED panel. However, skin tones and other hues do look very similar, along with black level and shadow detail. With HDR, like every other 2019 OLED against this Sony monitor, the differences were more apparent, with cleaner whites and better specular highlights on the monitor, with the Philips looking darker and bluer. But we don't expect a consumer TV at this price point to get anywhere close to a £35,000 professional panel. The comparison is a bit of fun and we can see how close they get, but you shouldn't read too much into these results. The important comparisons are with its peers, and in this respect the 854 holds up very well, with only very slight differences in performance between the panels. When calibrated, all the 2019 OLEDs look incredibly similar, with just different approaches to tone mapping with HDR standing out, along with differences with ABL circuits and how they're implemented from brand to brand. The 854 is slightly dimmer in HDR against its peers, and the ABL cuts in earlier than other screens, but it also produces a consistent performance with good highlight details and image balance. Colours are also excellent in HDR, with no issues in brightness or contrast. Blacks are superb, with just a hint of black crush seen in some content, and the 854 also performs to a very high standard with superb dynamic range and image sharpness. Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus are also excellent on the Philips, with a brighter and slightly better image consistency with Dolby Vision content via streaming or disc. Dolby Vision Bright Mode on the Philips has lots of image processing applied and motion interpolation, so if you want to see things as intended, you either need to select the Dolby Vision Dark Mode or switch off all the processing in the Dolby Vision Bright Mode. Gaming wise, the input lag was measured in the game mode at 33 milliseconds, which is not quite as fast as its OLED peers, and while most casual gamers will probably never notice that level of lag, if you're a more competitive type, you may notice some lag. It's certainly an area that Philips can improve on for their future TVs. Smart TV is Android TV version 9, and it was fast and stable with a good lineup of apps. We didn't have any issues with crashes or the system hanging. The menu system on the 2019 Philips TVs are complex, expansive, and they do get in the way of normal users. We also didn't like the UI for using the TV's inbuilt tuner. None of the interfaces are intuitive for end users, and they could do with a redesign to try and simplify them. Finally, we have a unique feature provided on all Philips TVs, and that is Ambilight. This is a bias lighting system provided by 3 strips of coloured LEDs behind the panel. As a picture purist, I prefer to use the D65 ISF mode with brightness set low to avoid missing shadow details in the image. However, you can set the 3-sided system to bright levels and have it follow the video on screen, changing colours to match, or to the audio and turn your living room into a nightclub. As a bias light, used properly in the ISF setting, it does have good intentions and the scientific backing behind it for relaxing the eye when you're watching TV, especially in a dark room. The Philips OLED854 is a solid OLED TV which competes with the very best on the market. It has a very nice design with excellent features like Ambilight for creating biased light while watching the TV in a dark room. It's not quite as accurate out of the box as some of the best screens out there from LG and Panasonic, but once calibrated it looks incredibly similar and offers exactly the same performance for the majority of content. There is the odd occasional black crush with some content, and the HDR image can look a little dark in comparison with its peers due to a more aggressive ABL limiter and a bigger roll-off in the tone map for the most accurate to the standards picture modes. However, Philips does provide the end user with a mountain of image processing settings where you can set the HDR brighter and add in frame interpolation and edge enhancements, but doing so takes you away from being accurate and seeing the content as it was intended. That said, the Philips processing is better than most on the market, and at least as a user, you are given the choice. The 854 can be very accurate in terms of image quality in the correct settings. Overall, the Philips OLED 854 is identical to the OLED 804 apart from the stand used, and it offers excellent image quality and good features. It is in a very competitive marketplace with screens from LG, Panasonic and Sony all offering very similar features and slightly different image performance with HDR content. The Philips 854 offers the same performance attributes as its peers and it comes recommended.